I want to start this video out by saying you will be offended, regardless of who you are. Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer. And so today we're not going to have a book review or, a conglomerate of books. I have a couple of things that I wanted to discuss, but I wanted to finish the book that I'm reading right now before I get to doing a group of book reviews again. But I wanted to finish the book that I'm reading right now before I do the next book review video, and I kind of just sort of ran out of time this week. But instead, we're going to have this discussion because it was brought on partially inspired by a lot of the discussion I've seen generally around kind of being tired of the discussion of female appearances in literally just 3 video games continuously with the same image over and over and over again. And the self-victimization of no matter who you are, what you believe, everybody thinks that their offendedness matters. And that is what we're dealing with here. So go ahead, get it out of the way, be offended, be prepared to be offended, be prepared. I'm prepared to be called a bunch of names. Probably should have put my titties on if I was going to do this today because the titties soften the blow. No joke. But before we get started, number 1, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number 2, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number 1 way to be featured is through Lemme, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story using that prompt, and on the first Monday video of the month, we bask in your greatness, in your creativity, because you guys are completely unique in your takes, in your originality, and your creativity, and it's fantastic. And the second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit it to the Fresh Meat feature, the first chapter will be read here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work, because I tell you, they are out there. And it's all about finding a way to reach them. The third thing is if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places to get books, including your local library upon request. With that said, let's get into this. Before we actually get into the topic of discussion today, I did want to read a short story for you on in honor of You're Going to Be Offended. So here we go. This short story is called Actual White People. They had only moved in about 2 weeks ago when I saw the flyer for a neighborhood watch meeting posted at the local library. The flyer gives the address of my new neighbors, the Pattersons, Tony and Becky. Of course their names both end in Y's. Name matching. It's what white couples do. Danny and Sandy, another white couple. Mitchell and Rachel, Jen and Ken. Peter and Deborah are just the odd ones out, but no one says anything. The time of the meeting is 7 p.m. Refreshments provided. It's then that I know that I have to find a way in. I know what Neighborhood Watch stands for. It's code for the white neighborhood watches people of color to call the cops on. It's a meeting that white people use to plot on neighbors that they want to get rid of neighbors they don't think belong, even when they are the ones that moved in. Neighborhood Watch flyers might as well say white people meetings. It's at these places where the whites talk to each other about what's called the white frequency. That's the tone which white people can reach telepathically, a metaphysical realm where they plan how they're going to enslave and torture us people of color. The white frequency is like Twitter, but only for white people. You have to be in close proximity and wearing your tinfoil hat in order to ascend. Up until now, I've never seen a flyer for the Neighborhood Watch in my area. And seeing it, I know everyone I love is in danger, and I have to do something before the new brown shirts form. Neighborhood Watch is more dangerous than Nazi brown shirts because their uniform is a simple polo shirt and jeans, something that everyone has in their closet. When dressed up for murder, they look like me and my wife and my neighbors Jose and Juanita. The only thing that gives them away is their secret greeting. Nazis of today don't raise their arm and say Heil. Instead, they raise their hand like they're swearing the oath to the United States and they say, "Hi." It's more efficient. Takes less breath, and efficiency is exactly what the racists of today are all about. They think they're so smart, but I've discovered them, and I'm not going to let them take my neighborhood. When I get there, Becky answers the door with a smile while wiping her hands on her polka-dotted apron. "I'm glad that you could make it," she says to me. "I don't think that I've met you before." "Why do you say that?" I say, laughing, hoping she doesn't notice how out of place I feel. I haven't even walked in the door yet. "Oh, we just moved here. We haven't gotten much of a chance to meet the neighbors. All the unpacking, you know." She twists her lips in that quirky way white people do to express some kind of stress, showing her teeth, scrunching her nose, waving her hand beside her head. A vague threat. sniff the air for blood. It's how they taste for white passing minorities. I swallow hard. I'm Becky, she says. She's going to strike me. I flinch away, but then after a moment, I realize her hand is floating in front of me and she's waiting to shake. I scrutinize it before taking it. I know, I say. Still shaking, Becky says, and you are? I am? I follow her stare. I know I see her eyes narrow. I know that she's noticing how dark my skin is, that my hand next to hers absolutely isn't quite right. Isn't quite white. Yeah, your name, she laughs. It's a test. Michael, I say before she can get too suspicious. Michael Joseph McAllister. Nice to meet you, Michael, Becky says, finally letting go of my hand. I think I've passed the test. Mind if I call you Mike? She elbows me and steps out of the doorway. I have passed the test. I walk in, laughing, though it's hard and stuck in my throat. Of course you could call me Mike. That's a very white person name, you know, but it's fitting, since I'm also a white person. Becky's not laughing. I also love dogs. A lot. I couldn't live without mine. Her head is cocked to the side a little. Sorry, my skin's a little dark. I just got back from Hawaii with the Famalam. I fling my finger guns at her, knowing how much white people love those. We go every year, you know. We're super well off. Have a house out there, take trips twice, maybe thrice a year. Glad to hear you're doing so well, Becky says, now leading the way to the living room. Once we get there, she says, please, make yourself comfortable. Snacks are all on that table, and we'll start the meeting here soon. At the far end of the room, there's a long table set up with homemade cookies, chips, a large glass pitcher of red drink. Is this the Kool-Aid? I say to her. A fruit punch, Becky says, following me. But is it the Kool-Aid? You know, I love drinking the Kool-Aid, I say in my straightest face. Becky turns her head a bit again. No, it's just fruit punch. I hope that's okay. I can't believe how boldly she just lied to my face. I'm about to say something, but then she raises her hand and says, Hi, Ken, to a man with perfectly combed blonde hair and wearing a thick green sweater. Ken must be some kind of royal in the ranks, and who the hell wears sweaters in the middle of July? I knew white people were bizarre, but the sweaters in the middle of summer thing is something I will never understand. That and the center part. I'm pouring some of the fruit punch when Tony takes a spot in the living room. All right, everyone, grab your snacks and let's gather round, he says. He's put on Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata in the background, and I know things are about to get real good. The only reason whites ever play classical music is to add drama to an evil deed they're about to do. My skin is crawling. My heart is racing. I've never seen whiteness in its most natural state before. Please, put on your tinfoil hats and we'll start the meeting. In synchrony, all 15 people in the circle unfold a tinfoil hat from their pockets, wallets, or purse and slip it onto their heads. All are pointed and round. Everyone looks like a chrome-painted lawn gnome. My palms are sweaty as I hold on to my own tinfoil hat. This, truly, is the moment where I become one of them, where I will finally hear the white frequency and experience every white thought they don't share with people like me for fear that we could stop their evil plans of world domination. I cannot believe that I am this close, but I'm scared, fearful to experience the true power of absolute whiteness. Michael, Tony says. Coming, I say, and then without further ado, I put on the tinfoil hat. The room is silent beyond the dipping piano of Beethoven's horror. I close my eyes, just waiting to ascend to the white frequency. But after minutes have gone by, I hear nothing. I open my eyes, look around the circle. Every white face is staring forward, stark, unmoving, unblinking. I'm afraid to clear my throat, but when I do, they all look at me at the same time. Sorry. I pause. But is anyone going to say anything? What do you mean? Becky says, cocking her head to the side. It's all on the frequency. Just as she finishes, her head tosses back and she laughs loudly, so loudly it hides the music. And then Tony laughs with her, and then everyone in the circle is laughing deeply and maniacally. Laughter, violent and powerful, like a murder of crows picking at a corpse, their voices attack my mind. I cover my ears with the feeling that my brain is about to explode. I'm going to die. Their white laughter is going to kill me. It can't be human. They can't be human. Is this the white frequency? And then, all of a sudden, it stops. Becky covers her mouth daintily with her hand and says, "Excuse me. Don't you hate it when that happens? Oh well, side effects of being white, am I right?" And then another round of roaring, hysterical, and homicidal white laughter fills the room. It surrounds me, consumes me, tortures my soul until I fall from my chair, sobbing into myself, calling for my mother and my God to save me while everything goes dark. Now, did that story offend you? With that said, this is going to be a difficult discussion because there is a mutual respect that needs to happen that is absolutely not happening. And anytime I've talked about this previously, people like to pick at one or the other and act like I say either disrespect the fans or disrespect the creator. And in this case, I think that creators need to have respect for the audience, and audiences need to have respect for the creators and the creators' visions. And that's not to say you have to like something that you don't like. But previously, and I was part of the generation, at least one of the generations that did this, if you didn't like something, you just found something else to do. Like you could say, hey, I have an opinion on this thing. Here is my opinion. Obviously, I do that here on this channel when I talk about book reviews. And then I share my opinion, but I don't demand that authors change what they're doing for me. I don't demand that people create with me in mind. And that's, I think, what I want to get at more, is there needs to be, I feel like there's a lack of respect in both cases. There are antagonistic creators like Druckmann from The Last of Us 2, who antagonize specifically people and saying, I am going to do this to you. But then there are other people not doing that, who are just doing their own thing or having their own interpretation. Let's look at the Silent Hills movies that weren't really the greatest adaptation of Silent Hills, or the Resident Evils that had their own version, own take on Resident Evil. It was not a slight against the fans for somebody to have a vision of their own. And so I think that there is some level of being super sensitive here, where everybody's creative instance, everybody's creative impulse to just create something is being considered malicious or not, depending on if it politically aligns with ideas, instead of just allowing artists to create the way that we do, and then you can pass your judgment on that creation. There's now an entitlement culture of telling creators to make things in your version for you, looking like you, or to your preferences. And that can be in the form of representation, or in the form of big-tittied women's, or in the form of ugly women's. It can take the form of a lot of things. What you're doing, what this comes down to is demanding creators make things your way. And it's one thing if they're open to it and they're saying, hey, give me your ideas and I will create them. It's another thing to see something that somebody else is creating and then say, no, do it for me. And if you want to talk about specifically stuff like Lara Croft being changed, or like new iterations of Battlestar Galactica, or like newer iterations of anything that's getting a reboot, then we're going to have to talk about the people that are looking at other stories like Horizon and like Fable 4 that have original characters that are still getting these demands. And so what I want to ask for in this conversation is that creators of any kind need to respect the audience. Don't act like your audience is stupid. Don't act like your audience owes you. Don't act like your audience is a pay pig. You are creating something meaningful. Theoretically, at least, I'm not saying everybody does, because I do think that there are people that just try to capitalize on controversy, capitalize on antagonism, and capitalize on politics. That's one thing. But if you're a creator who is making for art, if you're a creator who is part of a team that is creating a story, it is important to respect the audience that you are eventually imagining for that work, and that you don't want to treat them like they're stupid. You don't want to be disrespectful. You want to be loved. You want to cherish what you are giving them, because why would you give somebody garbage? In the same way that consumers need to recognize that creators are their own people with their own visions, their own styles, their own aesthetics, their own draws, and that's going to go into what they're creating. You don't have to like it. But making a demand on a creator as an individual is completely different. And for me, it crosses a line in the same way as a creator belittling the audience. Because there's a respect that needs to go both ways. And if it doesn't, if it's not a respect of, look, I respect you to like what you like, and then I respect you to make what you want to make, then we're just not going to get anywhere. And then it just becomes a, no, you're going to purchase from me, and then a, no, you're going to make things for me. And that really just destroys, one, the relationship between creators and audience, and then two, dampens and destroys the creative mind. And what are you allowed to do? Because then people are stuck in this mindset of, well, what am I allowed to do? What messages am I sending with this character? If this character is pregnant, if this character is not pregnant, if this character is pretty, if this character is not pretty. That's all the things that I've got in my mind now as I create, and then it just stops you instead of being able to tell truth about the character. Anyway, with that as the preface, and saying that this is not about being disrespectful to anybody, but discussing the things that I'm seeing, let's get into this discussion and tell me, were you offended? In case this is your first video here, or even I guess if this is your first video like this here, I am not trying to dictate what anybody thinks, what anybody likes, what anybody has seen, and I'm also not trying to be a video essayist that is like, this is the brass tacks of everything, and this is how it goes, and this is why it goes that way. I can only share what my perspective is, what I've seen, why I think the way that I do, and what is frankly driving me insane. And hopefully encourage other people to share their thoughts to get more coverage in general of maybe blind sites, and sort of try to enter a discussion. And maybe it doesn't turn out, I feel like everything that I do, and maybe you got this idea from my Saturday videos title, but I feel like everything that I do is pretty much a mistake. I don't think that I see things clearly. I don't think that I see things in the only way to see them, but I do feel like I live outside of people. Like, I feel so disconnected from other people in general. I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how to be like watching this stuff happen and how insane I feel. Like, it's obviously my issue because other people don't have an issue, or they have a completely different issue. And so I feel insane all the time. Regardless of who you are, it doesn't seem to matter. You're going to be offended. Why? Let's look at some of the stuff that has recently offended people, right? It's the girl bosses, the women focusing on diminishing men, the men saying that women cannot do anything but be homemakers, but have babies and are useless after 25. We got people using the Lord's name in vain. We've got people that misappropriate religious imagery, and then we've got people that insert religiousness into things to demonize other people. Big breasts offend people because it's sexualizing a character or playing to the male gaze. Small breasts piss off people because it is now avoiding sexualization and demonizing the big-breasted women. Pretty female characters are offensive because it makes the normal people feel ugly. Ugly female characters are offensive because it makes the people who want eye candy feel like they're being oppressed and insulted because characters that are not their type exist. This character is offensive because they claim to be neurodiverse, they claim to be autistic, they claim to be schizophrenic, they claim to have multiple personality disorder, but it is not accurate to the portrayal of whatever is determined, and thus it is now offensive. This story is offensive because it has no neurodiversity in it. This story is offensive because the cast is homogenous and it's all or mostly white. This cast is offensive because it is not white at all, or it minimizes white, or the white people in it are all stupid being propped up by the non-white people. This cast is offensive because it uses the non-white people as props. This story is offensive because the author is using a known property and saying that they are not going to reference the lore. This property sucks because the author is coming up with their own thing and says that they're not going to listen to the fans on what the fans want, and they're just going to write whatever they want to write. This property sucks because it leans too much into the property and is literally just a screen cap of the video game or the movie or the book that it was taken from. This story is offensive because this female character is defying the laws of nature by being as strong as she is. This story is offensive because the female character does literally nothing and is not helpful and is nothing but a block in the road, and the world moves around her to give her everything that she wants. This story is offensive because the main female character is completely useless and everything is done for her. This story is stupid. This story is offensive because the entire world curls around to coddle the main character. So it really doesn't matter what you do. You are always going to offend somebody. You're never going to please, everybody. This takes me back to when I was looking at the reviews for Where's Molly a couple of weeks ago, one that just popped up on my Goodreads dashboard, and the woman said that she was offended because in the story somewhere it had the character, having sex, crying out for God, and the guy was like, he's not going to save you, and even if he did come down here, I would nail him to the cross and kill him again to stop him from taking you from me. And the reviewer said that was offensive because she is a Christian and that was going too far by taking a moment that is meaningful in that religion and saying that. And saying that you would kill their savior again. Now, this is not a new thing. I know that Sarah Silverman has made jokes about killing Jesus Christ again, and I know that a lot of people have made jokes about killing Jesus Christ again. And guess what? People are going to be offended because that's edgy humor. If you look at the amygdala review previously done on this channel, there's stuff in there that people will find offensive, be it the animalistic, be it the headlessness, the sex everywhere, the eroticism. People are going to find things offensive because it's just going to be a clashing of different morals, of different ideas, of different whatever, and you don't have to like it. Look, the thing is, you are entitled to being offended. In my coming book review that I'm going to do about Teleshop USA, I'm going to go off on that because I freaking hate it. But guess what? The author doesn't have to care. The book wasn't for me. The author doesn't have to care that I didn't like it, that it wasn't written for me, that I don't like his characters, and that I was offended by the way that he presented this character. That's just my response. I feel like I used to hear this literally all the time 10 years ago, freaking 2015, 2016, where everybody was saying nobody cares if you're offended, so get over it, go and grow a tough skin, you don't have to watch if you don't like it, so stop trying to dictate. And now the dictation is coming from the other side. It's coming from literally everybody who has the only stake that they have is that, hey, I enjoy this thing. And I feel like I should be able to tell you what to do with that thing instead of just moving on. Let's be honest. Your offense doesn't mean anything unless it makes somebody feel bad enough that they're going to change it. Otherwise, you're just trying to manipulate people with your opinions if you try to force somebody to change things because you're offended. Nobody is saying that you have to like anything that is offensive to you. That is a legitimate reason to sign out of something. But trying to use I am offended or I personally believe this thing, so you shouldn't go against it, is tyrannical behavior. And I see a lot of tyranny of the creatives happening. And I feel like it is also being used specifically to exploit the creatives now, because this kind of coincides with the idea of how AI is going to fix things because people aren't being kowtowed to. Now, look, I got into it with somebody what was it, like a week or two ago, saying how the Fable 4 female character, yet again, one of the 3 examples. What are the 3 examples that are constantly freaking brought up? Mary Jane and the new Spider-Man Fable chick from Fable 4 that nobody has any information on, by the way. That game isn't even out yet. And Aloy, the same singular image of Aloy. And I thought this whole thing was about, hey, just don't take legacy characters and do your own thing with them. If you want to do your own thing, make your own original characters. Okay, cool, done. And the tyranny is back. So sorry if I don't believe people anymore. But I got into it with somebody talking about the Fable 4 character where I was saying, hey, you're not on the creative team. Have your opinions, but you are not the representative of a bunch of people to then yell at. You have an opinion, but you're not on the creative team. And the creative team is going to do what the creative team does. Personally, I find it offensive when people not involved in a project think that they have a say in what I do if I didn't ask for their opinion. If I put out a story, if I put out a character, if I say that I'm going to write a story, and then suddenly you think that you can tell me what to do with my characters or my story or my interpretation, that's offensive. Who the frick do you think you are? And guess what? What does my offense do? If I get offended by something that you say, how do you feel? Is it you don't care? Okay, so then why should anybody else care when you're offended by somebody else's character design or choices or path or whatever? And so then this conversation kept changing from what I was actually saying to trying to find ways to dismiss what I said, and then trying to have this power fantasy of I'm a shareholder, so my opinion matters more than yours. If your opinion mattered as a shareholder, don't the companies normally call meetings to get your vote? Not, refer to you having a Twitter argument with a literal nobody. I'm the literal nobody, by the way. So that's trying to appeal outside of the actual conversation, outside of the ethics, outside of the moral, outside of what actually we're talking about in a setting, to then appeal to just having power to tell me what you want. And that's, again, creative tyranny. I hate to say it, and I have no idea how it got here. Well, I do. It kind of has to do with politics. Where we've gotten to this point where people think that their preferences not being met is some sort of personal insult. And you can see it in the conversations. If you don't like what I have to say about the hot girl conversations, about the females in video games conversations, go and look at it in creative writing. I'm sure a lot of people will not agree with me on this either because they really don't want to, and that's fine. I can just tell you what I see. Maybe you'll think about it. Maybe you'll discard everything that I say that's trash because my opinion is trash anyway. But think of it in the same situation as people saying, hey, where is this diverse character in this cast? Why isn't this written in this way? It should be written in this way because if I'm not represented in this fiction, it's an insult because you're pretending that I don't exist. If you write this character in this sort of way and then say that they have this sort of label, then you're making it an insult. If you play into a stereotype, you're making it an insult of me. And this is how a lot of it has gotten, is the insertion of I need to be represented. I need to see myself in a story. And then if I don't see my way in a story, it is an insult to me. And now it's carried over from not just me wanting to be personally inserted into somebody else's story, but now a lot of people who don't necessarily do the self-inserts, they want their fantasies inserted into the stories. They want their preferences inserted into the stories, and now it's treated as some sort of insult. And this is nothing new. Okay, I just watched a video by Jose. I will link it in the description down below if you want to go and check it out, with how things change over time, how cultures change over time, how media literacy, what media literacy looks like. I feel like part of this is over-conceptualizing, taking it over personal when it's just creative decisions at the time. Look, that's not to say that there are not political decisions being made rebelliously against certain people. That's always happened too. People make decisions all the time where somebody says, hey, don't do that. I told you not to do that. That's a bad thing. And somebody goes, screw you. I'm going to do whatever the frick I want. And the more you tell me not to do it, I'm going to do it even harder. And so that's always been there. It hasn't suddenly changed in recent history. So there are political decisions that are happening just to spite people. And then there are political decisions happening in the opposite, just to spite the other people. And you know who gets sucked into the damaging part? It's the people just trying to create. Because this stuff, this back and forth between these political factions that don't care so much about creating arts on their own, but rather controlling the arts and the art conversations while they're fighting. Everybody else is getting splashed with the same acid, where if they say something in a certain way, then they're going to be painted in a certain way. If you look at the recent controversy with the comment from the Fallout director, he said something about it's a fool's errand to try to please the fans. Then that comment was made as the headline for Bounding into Comics and for other places without giving further context. There's no way to know what he's going to do. But the rest of that interview shows that he is a fan of Fallout, saying that it is difficult, if not impossible, to try to please every single fan. And you have to take the things that you can, the elements that you love about whatever property you're using, and try to best serve it in the story that you're trying to tell. Now, that can either turn out well or it can turn out poorly, but that's the case with every single creative endeavor. Your stories will either suck or they won't suck, or they'll be mediocre. But it is not a specific thing against you or the fans. There's also this idea that these people that actually, are spending time creating are watching what these other people are doing as opposed to acting on their own. I don't know. I couldn't say. But I constantly think of stuff like, I couldn't get into the Yakuza fan base, in the fandom period, because of the sexualization and the sexual abuse done to Majima from the first moment that I went and looked at stuff. I cannot stand that stuff. And so if you look at that, and if somebody were to say, want to expand, want to write something, their own version of Yakuza 0, the movie, the TV show, something, and then the fans said, hey, we've got all of this background. This is what we want. We want Majima to be treated this way. And then other people said, hey, I'm not really into that. I would rather, it not be that. Who do you listen to? You have people who enjoy the newer design of Lara Croft, and you have people who enjoy the older design of Lara Croft, and you have people who enjoy both. It's not an insult to prefer one or the other. When I heard more about the situation with Lara Croft and with there being a new company that owns her that insulted the previous version to then boost the current version or their version, that doesn't seem so much an issue with Lara Croft. It seems an issue that is widespread. That is, you have to insult what came before in order to justify what goes forward. And it's not specific to this. Look at fiction, where it's, oh my gosh, we're going into freaking Guns and Smoke, where Clara comes in, and Clara was going to be the wife, or was engaged to Jesse, and she has to be insulted and belittled and demeaned in order to make Jesse look better. Look at the fiction where the male counterpart has to be insulted by the female counterpart in order to be better. I think that this is more a sickness of the culture than it is meant to be a denigration of a certain type of woman. And then I listen to these conversations that come from all kinds of directions. Again, I'm not saying that I see everything or know everything. This is so difficult to actually get into because nobody believes you when you want to actually talk about subjects that you actually try to understand from different perspectives. I understand the people that think that attractive characters are under attack, but I also think that there is an over focus on it because I see only the same 2 or 3 characters all the time. I never see people reaching out into further things, and maybe they are. Again, I can't see everything, but it's also taking things so personally that are not that personal. There were Silent Hills movies before that did not follow the lore, and people hated those too, but it wasn't an insult that erased Silent Hills, and it didn't stop the new iterations of Silent Hills. It's people take what's there and decide, hey, I'm going to try to get rights to make a version of this, and then do it. I understand that people feel like the attractive female characters and being an attractive female is also under attack. So is being an atypical kind of female. And this is where I think I get frustrated because I see so many people try to act like they are the only ones suffering. They are the only ones hearing insults because they are hyperfixated on the insults, on the denigration that is done to them. And I understand why, because we all pay attention to stuff that we fall into the label of those things. I understand women that feel demonized for being attractive, women that have had different experiences because of bodily developments. Funny enough, I have a character whose backstory is she developed very quickly at the beginning of high school to the point that she lost all of the friends that she had because they got jealous of her body. She was being sexually harassed. Her panties were being stolen from the gym and being given to the classmates. She was harassed on the trains. She was approached to do AV movies. And she didn't feel like she had control of her body. She felt so ashamed of herself because she lost all of her friends basically overnight because they all had a different relationship with her. And she is gorgeous and she knows it. But it was difficult for her in school. This isn't to dismiss anybody's suffering. I think that the conversation gets so shallow because there's so much focus on personal victimization, and it gets very difficult to see other perspectives. And that just happens. It's just natural. It happens that way. So I've seen the demonization of beauty. I've seen the demonization of female characters done in a certain light. It's not like I didn't agree with people 10 years ago, but now I'm seeing so much tyranny in every single way where you can't even have discussions about this stuff. I've been called disabled and worthless for not having a large chest. I've watched my videos perform better when I wear fake breasts, and I'm treated like I matter more only because of the breasts. No one's words matter because my entire value Nobody's words matter because your entire value is on your breasts. Nobody cares about your accomplishments as long as you got those DDs, EEs. Oh man, everyone's got a plight. And there's hyper focus that can't be avoided because of course we're going to notice what is said to us, about us, what is applicable to us. But in doing so, you're getting into a habit where you're then saying that other people don't suffer, don't know, can't know. And it's no different than the people that say white people can't suffer, look at my suffering. Or that race can't suffer, look at my suffering. And I don't know how to fix it. I know that I'm getting frustrated because as a creative person, and it doesn't freaking matter. And I know it doesn't matter to people that are not involved in this in that way because it's all about the output. It's all about, well, I want to enjoy the thing. I don't really care how it's made. I don't really care about any of that. I'm sharing what I'm frustrated with because I understand what other people are frustrated with. And I don't know what better to do about this. There's literally nothing to do because I think we're just all going to be stuck being frustrated that things are not being catered to us in the way that we want. And that includes me, which is just being able to have conversations where this stuff literally does not matter. But I feel it's kind of insane the number of people who are aligning their own personal values and making characters, other people's characters, totems for their personal values. Everyone has their own plights that they fight. And constantly what I see in the comments and in conversations is these changes on these characters, these new iterations of these characters are somehow personal attacks. It's not. It's a product at best, and it's a creative endeavor and an attempt at something different at worst. And sometimes they just don't work, and that's fine. but it's not a personal attack. And making it so personal is making discussion impossible. It's making understanding impossible. And then I see stuff like, I avoid these things majority because they preach. And so you're never going to get more exposure to different things. And it's only going to bury you further into the bias. And that's fine. I completely understand. I'm not saying to partake in or support or enjoy or look at anything that is against what you would typically enjoy. That is, nobody has that requirement of anybody. Be offended by what you want, consume what you want, enjoy what you want, think what you want, and let others create what they want. It's one thing to say, hey, I hate this thing, I don't like this thing. It's another thing to say, you are not allowed to do that thing. And so what I see a lot with the I avoid entirely certain things because they are all preachy. I entirely avoid looking at anything Western because Westerns are all preachy. I understand where this comes from, but I also think that it is completely incorrect. And I obviously, like I said, you don't have to investigate any further, but do you know where this perspective might come from? It's because people who are normal don't say anything. The ones who are normal don't do videos saying how wrong you are for thinking something, for liking something. It's because the enjoyment of something has been politicized, where now if it's a hot character, you're political this way and you support it this way. If it's not a specifically sexualized character, then you're politically that way. And just the idea of designs of characters, of the involvement of certain characters, of female leads, of certain races as leads, of certain anything as leads, is now politicized. When the majority of people who are just normal, who are just creating, don't actually do that. They don't talk about it because they're also not given positions to, one, to talk about it, and two, there's nothing to talk about. It's a character. It's a story. Enjoy, don't enjoy. It's not a moral issue. But then since it's only the activists who are speaking, then it gives this impression that this is all that there is. Or you know how many dingers, how many stinkers I read? Check out the backlog. I read a lot of stinkers. If I stopped reading because I found a stinker, I wouldn't have found some of my favorite books either. I personally don't think that this is as widespread an issue, but I do feel like anger and resentment and hatred and bias are being sowed in everything, to the point where it's impossible to have a discussion about anything because people assume that if you don't agree with them on something, then you're going to come at them, that you somehow disagree with them on everything. These characters are allowed to exist without being drawn or created a certain way, and everybody assuming because I disagree with them, I get maligned so often, all the time. I don't know what to do. That's probably why this video is this video. I don't know what to do other than at some point just completely disconnect and completely refuse to acknowledge any of this stuff anymore. And all I will do is create and love on the creations that I make and love on the creations that other people make that are fantastic, that are so cool, that's an interesting or different way to approach something, and to ignore the peanut gallery of things that are not about the story. Oh my gosh, I forgot to mention, this is where part of it I think it came from. So you know how so much in the political space has been, these creators don't care about you. They think that they are entitled to you purchasing their thing, which true. Many of the corporations do, because the corporations also think that they are entitled to your personal information and that they should be able to use your personal information to sell things to make more money. A lot of the political opiners on media credit every creative decision as being a political one, and that these companies hate you. Stop giving money to people who hate you. Give your money to me instead. And this, I feel like, has fostered this environment of you need to create for me or else. Even if it's a brand new product, even if it's a brand new universe, look at how Rippaverse is being called Rip Herverse because of everything going on with Yaira. I understand that there is some bait and switch going on, but there is also, I think, some level of this toxic environment in the creative sphere where it has been made that you must create for me. The customer matters more than the creator. Screw the creator. You are just here to dance, monkey dance, as we tell you how. And if you don't, then you're a bad person. And I've seen this exact same mindset behind the generative AI stuff, which is we will fix the things that the authors and the creators refuse to do for us. And that's what it is. It is a create it for us, write it for us, as if you are commissioning, instead of just going to see what somebody does and if you like it or don't like it. Guess what? Newer versions of something do not deplete, do not erase, do not go over the previous version. There are books that have been turned into movies that have been terrible movies that have not denigrated the value of the books. There have been video games that have been turned into movies that are not good. And there have been video games that have been turned into movies, and the movies aren't good, but the video games are fine. It's just somebody else's interpretation. And this didn't used to matter that much. I mean, people fought over these minor things all the time and accredited to them motive that was ridiculous. Whether you were demanding representation or tits, you were demanding that you be listened to instead of just looking at what a creator is doing and then saying whether you like it or not. And I think that's just as ridiculous as a creator saying, read my thing and like it. You don't get to not like it. You have to like it. Both are ridiculous. And that is what it's doing. And this is about tits. I've had people try to gaslight me that it's not about tits. Let me repeat it because people don't seem to understand. Beautiful women are allowed to be beautiful, are wonderful. The human body is gorgeous in its peak condition. I love looking at beautiful characters. I love looking at regular characters. I love character designs that matter to the story. But this is not that. This account is not run by AI. It's an actual human being posting, just fixing characters with AI and posting about making gaming great again. So number one is in the art community in general. When you take somebody else's work and then edit it and then say, I fixed your thing for you, that's usually frowned upon. But how do they fix these things? I wonder what changed in this. I wonder what this video is all about. Character of a generation for the bouncing of her tots. I wonder what changed. Not her face, not her clothes. But I've been told so many times that it's not just giving value in that way. And I feel like I'm going to have to say it again. This isn't an opinion against beautiful characters, but it is an opinion on entitlement. And this, like, if I'm looking at these pictures, these AI generated with tots, I would say that is more akin to fan fiction if it wasn't so disrespectful. Because you can do whatever you want with fan fiction because you like the characters. If you can do whatever you want with fan art because you like the characters. And so I would give this to fan art because they do like the characters and they're idealizing them. That's what happens. And I think that's reasonable. But I think when you start demanding creators kowtow to you, whether it be changing their race, changing their sexuality, changing their body types, it goes too far. It's disrespectful. And this, I don't know what you're supposed to do with this because it's not a respect of the characters. It's saying these characters cannot be respected unless they have tots. And then you try to have this conversation and people tell you that you are shaming them for having tots. No, I just want to have a conversation about characters being allowed to exist however they're allowed to exist, and you can choose whether to like them or not. And I don't know what to do with it anymore. A lot of my male characters would be considered sissies by a lot of people because they don't look like Kratos. Because Casey wears nail polish. It doesn't matter how masculine Casey is. He wears nail polish. He's a little punk rocker, so he's going to be freaking insulted. Ralph is a passive, very gentle man. He has a lot of courage. He has a lot of love. He has his own strengths, but he is not Kratos either. People create characters differently. For me, I really can't understand this mindset. I think this is where I'm going to end this, okay? People have different aesthetics that they're drawn to when they create characters. That's just how it is. Every single person that I know that creates characters has aesthetics that they are drawn to, that they generally appeal to, that they lean into, and directions that they want to go. I'm not going to go into somebody else's story and then start demanding that they do things the way that I think that they should do them. If I have a book review, I'm going to talk about what I think or what I don't think. I'm not going to go to the creators and start tagging the creators to tell them to do things my way to appease me. Now, I gotta say, I haven't ever seen myself in anything that I've read or watched, and that's never been an expectation that I've had, because nobody can be me. I don't really know where this expectation comes from, that other people are somehow going to be able to represent you or write you or your experiences and their stories, but it feels like putting way too much pressure on somebody who doesn't know you. I mean, like, where does this come from? And would you trust a stranger who doesn't know anything about you to actually represent your life and your experience as somebody you haven't even talked to? Usually biographers that are working directly with somebody have to go through some very intense back and forths so that the person can better understand them. So why is it now that a bunch of random authors are being charged with this idea of representing people that they've never met, whose experiences they know nothing of, and since they don't know them, they don't think anything about them? I don't understand this mindset, and I don't understand how you get there. And I'm not going to go through my list of criteria of labels, because I've also felt such a pressure in any of this discussion to say what I am, what I would be labeled as, what I should be considered as, so that people know whether or not my experiences matter, so that people know whether or not I've seen myself reflected or not, because everybody has so much pressure to say, well, this is what I am, and I don't see myself. Self-ID pressure is real. And honestly, it feels like when those self-IDs are used in these conversations, it is also an attempt to manipulate the other person into saying theirs so that you can measure whose qualities matter more to make whose voice matter more instead of actually discussing the conversation. But that's just me. And I feel like that separation is not being understood anymore, that a creator can create and you can experience something without it having to be changed specifically for you. A new character design is not generally an insult. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's done in rebellion against something or someone, and that's also part of anything. So is the obstinance in general. What's more insulting to me than a new character design or a new character concept is apologizing for something that came in the past, acting as if that is wrong, that liking that thing is wrong, while then elevating your thing forward. It's the same thing when it happens in books, when a love interest has to be insulted and belittled, a rival, wherein a rival love interest has to be insulted and belittled and made evil and mean in order to make the chosen love interest look better. That's what's insulting. Companies, creators, and bands have even done it with past music where they said, we're sorry for being insensitive in the past, which is attempting to push the blame on you that you're a bad person if you like those things. That's the problem. That needs to stop. You can change things without apologizing for what came before. And this also goes into like historical context too, where people say, hey, that thing in the past was wrong, so now the current thing is wrong, and so then my version is holier than thou, and we need to do it my way. This is an issue that I see, a pattern that I see in multiple places. Do you? I'm not saying that you have to like things that you don't like. I'm not saying that anybody is wrong in seeing anything political happening, but I also think that there are a bunch of false positives, and creatives are getting stuck in the middle when they're just trying to make things. I think normal people are also getting stuck in the middle where they're just trying to enjoy things, in the same way that I think the people who love certain things are getting stuck in the middle of this battle where totems or artifacts of their childhood, of their past, things that they love and adore are being insulted as political pawns. I think that's happening everywhere. I don't think being offended does anything. I think being offended is a way to express why you don't like something, but I don't think it is something that changes how anybody behaves. Nobody can stop you from being offended, but nobody is entitled to change and nobody has to adjust for you. If I say that I am offended by somebody using Christ's name in a certain way, what am I going to be told? Generally, get over it. Right, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect anybody else. It is my thing. So then why does this matter to other people? Why is this control such a big thing? It's unhealthy to put your value on something that you don't control. Remakes, redesigns will happen. They will change with the times. Look at how androgynous the 70s and the 80s and the 90s partially were. It does nothing to sit around and demand, why aren't your insecurities and desires being fed? It looks like tyranny of creativity to me, no matter what type of representation it is being demanded. The only difference here is that I don't sit around going, where are the things that I want? I go and make the things that I want, and then I try to share the visions that I see. And I try to encourage other people to do the same. I can't solve everybody's problems with the things that I create, because I think a lot of people are going to absolutely abhor the things that I make. But fortunately, there are a lot of different creative people out there that can feed so many different things, that can feed so many different desires. You can find different people doing different things. And that's more what it's about than trying to demand everybody that is using something that you want to like to cater to you. I don't know. I don't know what to do other than every single time I see these conversations come up, I just lose faith and I don't want to talk to people and I don't want to talk to anyone anymore. And I think that everything is just a mistake. And so then I'm just going to curl into my make-believe world of my make-believe characters and find the characters that other people are making that I like and ignore everything else. Because I really just lose faith. And how much everybody hates everybody for everything. Get in line. I figured I'd be on my own for, ever. Because I never fit in. because there was always that pressure to conform one way or another. It's always there. But I got nothing else but the will to create. Nobody will control the things that I want to create. People might not like them. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. And that said, have a good weekend. Don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?